don't forget, there's plenty of video footage and people are very recognizable. And, distinctive clothing, you can wear a mask, but if you're wearing a T-shirt with the name of the company that you work for, you'll probably be found.
Yeah.
And so you can expect a knock on the door. Perhaps it will be months later, but that will happen. And there will now be a big investigation of the circumstances of each of these events.
The National Police Chiefs Council say an extra 4,000 riot police are on standby to deal with further riots. Chief Constable BJ Harrington, the council's lead for public order, says officers have been subjected to sustained levels of violence. He's also said, if you've been involved but haven't been arrested yet, your time will come. Let's speak to Peter Walker, former Deputy Chief Constable of North Yorkshire Police and Times Radio Breakfast listener. Peter, good morning to you.
Morning, Callum.
Really good to speak to you. Thank you so much for joining us. First of all, then, I suppose a reflection from you on how the police have handled broadly the protests, the riots over the course of the last few days. There are dozens upon dozens of officers who have been injured in all of this.
Indeed. And can I just cover very quickly, there are no extra police. These are the same police that would normally be on duty. How the numbers have been enhanced is by having rest days and other leave cancelled. So, those police officers who are in Hull or Liverpool or Leeds, anywhere else, and Stoke, anywhere else in the country, dealing with disturbances yesterday were people who perhaps should have been off for the weekend, mums who didn't take their children to sporting events, dads who didn't cut the grass or mow or wash the car, birthday parties missed, all that sort of thing. Huge disruption on their lives. And having been involved in these sort of circumstances myself in the past, they really will be very physically tired. When you come away from that type of event, you are physically tired, and yet you've got to come back out the following day and do it all again. And perhaps do it in a different city or a different town because you're being bussed across the country to help out another force where the threat is greater than in your own.
Yeah.
My old force was always a net contributor rather than a net receiver of mutual assistance from other police forces.
It's an interesting consideration, that, Peter, actually, the kind of movement around the country based on where these things are flaring up, because the riots have moved around the country over the course of the last few days.
Yes, and they're turning up spontaneously. I have to say there's a reason we have the word in the English language of inexcusable and also unjustifiable. The sort of behaviour that we're seeing is both inexcusable and unjustifiable. There is absolutely no reason why people should be trashing shops, looting, and those sort of things. And as that Chief Constable has said, who's coordinating the response, don't forget, there's plenty of video footage and people are very recognizable. And, distinctive clothing, you can wear a mask, but if you're wearing a T-shirt with the name of the company that you work for, you'll probably be found. Yeah. And so you can expect a knock on the door. Perhaps it will be months later, but that will happen. And there will now be a big investigation of the circumstances of each of these events.
What, Peter, do you make of the political response? And I suppose there's an interesting relationship between politics and the police at a time like this. One of the things that we've been focusing on throughout the morning is that political response and what the public would back, how far the politicians can go. Do you think they have gone as far as they can, or is there room for the politicians to do something that would clamp down on these riots quicker?
What will cause these events to terminate is possibly a change in the weather. There is somebody known in the police service as Police Constable Rain, who, bad weather stops these sort of events continuing. Secondly, there will be a natural point where interest in them wanes from people who've attended. There will be some arresting that goes on that takes key players and organizers of these events out of the picture. But also we need to avoid the performative politics. And by that I mean ministers or other politicians making statements to play to their political base. That's not helpful in any respect. And having been involved in this type of thing, frankly, politicians turning up whilst you're trying to deal with it is also a complication that senior officers can do without. And you know, it's all very well, you're halfway through something very, very complicated, and you've suddenly got to escort a senior politician around the place because they expect to be taken round by somebody senior. Doesn't help. Let the police get on and deal with their core mission: protect life, protect property, and try and get the wherever it is back to a status of the King's peace.
Would you welcome something of more of an intervention from the Prime Minister, whether that is through the sort of a public statement, for example? He obviously gave one a few days ago. Is it time for another one? Would you like to see the Prime Minister saying something? And if so, what should he say?
The Prime Minister has set the strategy the other day when he gave a press conference, having met with senior police leaders. There are some people who will criticise the way in which he articulated that. I'm not one of them. Give a clear direction and then let the people that you pay to do a job get on and do that job on your behalf. Now, Sir Keir, fortunately, has a long history of being involved in the criminal justice system. He will understand what the component parts are and what the processes need to be in order to resolve this and deal with the outcome in terms of courts, prisons, etc. He will no doubt, because you know, of his experience, he will no doubt have a plan in place. His next step, I suspect, will be to articulate exactly what that strategy is going to continue to be. And that will be helpful.
Peter, it's really good to speak to you this morning. Thank you very much. Thanks for listening. Thanks for being in touch with us. And thanks for coming on the programme as well. We'll speak again soon.
You're welcome.
Thank you. All the best. That's Peter Walker, former Deputy Chief Constable of North Yorkshire Police, who is also a listener to Times Radio Breakfast.